This video is made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.
New Pokémon Snap gives players the power of photography in the palm of their hands. I can imagine that some of you may have dabbled in video game photography before, with perhaps the original Pokémon Snap and modern titles like Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury or Super Mario Odyssey. New Pokémon Snap seems almost perfectly designed to introduce players to a basic understanding of how to take photos and edit them in a digital environment. We thought it would be smart to present you with an overview of the options available to you and how to best shoot, edit and export your final photos online. But first let me state that this is not a guide for getting high scores in the single player mode. This guide is for players who want to create the best possible photos for sharing and impressing other players in the online modes or for their own creativity. Also, photography and its appreciation is completely subjective. We can't tell you what's a good or bad shot, but we can offer you the knowledge of how to use these tools to create your own cool shots in the world of New Pokémon Snap. With that out of the way, let me talk you through the topics of this guide. Part 1. We will be talking about the basics of the Resnap mode in New Pokémon Snap, how to use it, what tools there are and what are the limitations. Part 2, we'll be talking about the lab, how to adjust and post-process your images, and how to best apply filters and frames. Part 3 will focus on how to export and save your photos and what limitations this process has. With that being said, let's get on with Part 1, talking about Resnap. New Pokémon Snap has introduced a Resnap mode that enables you to completely retake a photo you've already made during one of the research expeditions. In essence, it's best compared to watching a replay from Super Smash Bros. The game takes all the data that was present during that particular moment and recreates the setting for you to play around with. I'm emphasizing this because this limits the inputs that you're able to do when resnapping a photo. As you'll notice, not all Pokémon will be repositioned during Resnap mode. You'll only be able to see Pokémon that were present during the making of the photo in a specific area around the Pokémon itself. Want to have a nice wide shot with two Pokémon on opposite ends of the map? Well, you're gonna need to be very lucky with the zoom out or it's not going to happen. Another important aspect of this is that Resnap data cannot be accessed after sending photos to your album, meaning that if you want a shot of a particular Pokémon, you're gonna need to shoot it during the expedition itself, because when you're done with resnapping and have selected the photos to be saved, all Resnap data is removed as well, so think wisely of a Pokémon on a course and the ones you'll want to get a picture of. Resnap has a couple of tools at its disposal to give you control over the picture. The basic ones are movement and zooming. You can reposition the camera view and zoom levels of the shot by using the left stick and the ZL and ZR buttons. This can be done at any time during the Resnap, so be sure to start out with positioning. You can check the amount of zoom with the slider on the left hand side of the screen. Important to note is that Pokémon Snap retains a 4:3 aspect ratio when snapping a photo, instead of your television screen, which will presumably be 16:9 and much wider. See those white borders in the frame? These give an indication of how your picture will be cropped after taking the shot. Want to get a Pokémon in a nice close-up? Don't zoom in all the way and take shots in between zooming to make sure that it fits within the borders of the frame. Rotations can help you out here. By using the L and R buttons, you can rotate the frame. Note that you cannot fully rotate a shot by 180 degrees to change a photo to portrait mode, but that cap is around 170 degrees. Still, this can help you when lining up Pokémon against the horizon or posing them in dynamic ways. On the right hand side, you'll see several additional options that give you control of the shot and camera. They may seem self-explanatory, but we found there's some neat tricks to them all. Starting with brightness control. Now it sounds obvious at first, but this option controls brightness. But unlike controlling the brightness of a photo, it actually controls the brightness of the world as it was taken at that time. Take a scene in daylight, for example. When lowering the brightness, it emphasizes the part where sunlight can't reach, like shadows, but when increasing brightness, it adds more white light to the shot. An interesting thing to keep in mind is that New Snap has a lot of natural light sources that give it their own energy. Take fire effects from the Score Bunny, for example. Lowering the brightness keeps the flame bright and makes it pop really nicely. This works wonders for some of the nighttime stages or when there's fire involved. Blur is also straightforward and literally blurs part of the stage. The slider determines the intensity of the blur, but not the placement. For that, the next two sliders are used. The focus size determines the size of your focus in a circle around the subject. Basically, the wider the focus is, the more sharply your subject will be shown. A good way to experiment and show this is to increase the blur all the way to maximum and from there dial it back to an appropriate amount. I tend to prefer smaller focus sizes for Pokemon, since that helps me blur out the background and gives them a way to pop out of the frame. Now you might be thinking, I've used a small focus size, but now my subject is blurred and out of focus too. Well, this is where the focal point comes in. This determines how deep the focus is projected into the photo. Subjects close to the lens need a short focal point, but if you want to focus on something far away, perhaps one zoomed in, you'll need to increase that focal point. You may not have noticed, but the focal size can easily be spotted when you're moving around the focal point. You can see a circle of sharpness move across the frame when adjusting these settings, which may help you to determine what is in focus or not, or where to shift the focus to if you'd like that. Finally, on this option screen, there's the filter options and caption options. Now, I'm gonna be frank with you all and say that the filter option is absolutely garbage. Genuinely lacking in all options one may need, as well as giving access to some much needed tools that you're gonna be implementing elsewhere. At the time of recording this, the filter options include 8 colored silhouette filters that only show a silhouette of a subject or object you are photographing. Now, I found it to be workable for some interesting shots like this leopard at night, but nearly every single time it leaves out details, colors and focus that it's a near unworkable filter. If you can experiment with it, good for you, but for now I'm gonna pretend that this game does not have filters in Resnap mode. The caption option is fun, but doesn't add anything to the photo except when posting it online, at which point you can change the caption regardless later on. A few nice shortcuts to know of. You can press the X button to hide all menus and outlines to give you a better view of their surroundings. This may help by maybe spotting Pokemon you may have missed when taking the shot itself. A good note here is that you can still change the options here using the D-pad and buttons. So if you want to adjust the blur or focal point in full frame, just select the slider, turn off the menu's visibility with X, and adjust the sliders with the D-pad. This is also a neat way for you to snap a photo in the full 16:9 aspect ratio using the Switch internal capture mode. Just push the capture button and you're ready to go. This is something to think about when we're talking about exporting your photos later on, so keep that in mind. Finally, you can press the Y button to completely delete all your changes to the shot in case you want to start fresh. With that out of the way, now you know how to best take a shot using Resnap, but let me give you some pointers on what to use when resnapping a shot. While the game may score you on what is a good or a bad shot, try following your instinct and also resnap some of your shots that don't recognize subjects or aren't rated particularly high. Because the resnap mode uses data from the game, you may find other Pokemon in that same shot that would be great to snap a more detailed picture of. I would advise just scrolling through your photos and also look at some shots you may have taken earlier during the expedition, just to see what it looks like from another angle or timing. 2. Focus on the alignment of your shot. Stuff like the ocean are always horizontally placed. Our brain enjoys it when subjects are framed properly against the horizon, so make sure to rotate your shots to accommodate this. Now, I'm gonna explain to you the rule of thirds. Basically, every image can be divided into 3x3 squares by drawing both horizontal and vertical lines on every third of an image. It's been studied and our human minds appreciate subjects that take up about 2/3 of an image. You can use this by making close-ups of Pokemon or framing them in such a way that the background shows about 1/3 of the image. This isn't an exact science, but try zooming both in and out of subjects and reframing shots to make them take up only specific parts of an image. In case this doesn't work out, you can always fall back on Professor Mirror's advice, smack dab in the center. 4. I personally like to blur out backgrounds of images to make sure that no other subjects fill the shot, but also to make the Pokemon in question take center stage during their actions. Especially in the nighttime stages, the starry nights can really work wonders when being blurred, giving a surreal experience to viewing the Pokemon in their habitat. Though you can also experiment what happens when you blur out a Pokemon and focus on the background and the brightness. Try this in stages that accommodate for different light sources. Part 2. Finishing touches. So once you've selected all your shots, resnap them and then save them to your album, you can access your photo collection in the lab. Go to Lab, Your Space, Album, and select the photo you'd like to edit. When selecting your photo, several options underneath the photo are available. For this bit, I'll be focusing on the photo editing option. This mode enables you to edit your photo a bit more in depth compared to Resnap. Though, unlike Snap, you won't control the photo's data, but the actual photo you've created and saved after resnap and selection. Here you'll find some much needed features to polish up and experiment on your photo. Some are more straightforward, others are purely to create some stylish photos. There's 3 different categories here, so let's work through them one at a time. Filters. Here you'll find settings that completely change the visual style of the photo itself. Astonishingly, this is also where you can adjust some of the more basic settings like contrast, exposure, and colors. Now, I say astonishingly for two reasons. One, you can apply only a single filter at a time at the time of this recording, meaning it's impossible for you to both adjust the contrast as well as change the colors at the same time. Why they've chosen to do this is beyond me, but be aware that you can only pick one filter at a time. Even when exporting a photo, you cannot readjust the photo again by applying a second filter. At the beginning of the game, some filters are not available, but you can unlock them gradually by gaining more research titles and progressing throughout the main game. I found the filters at the start to be the most important and useful. The ones that are unlocked are fun to use incidentally, but mainly if you want to go for a very explicitly stylish photo. I won't go through every filter because they tend to be pretty self-explanatory, but I would advise a newcomer to play around with them regardless, because you can adjust the intensity of every applied filter. Take the monochrome filter for example. While you may think this filter just turns everything into a grayscale, at its lowest intensity it can enhance the brightness of a photo on the lighter parts. Especially for the exposure, contrast and occasionally the fisheye filters, this intensity can help out with highlighting certain objects in the frame. But again, only one at a time, so choose wisely. When applying a filter, you can always view the original picture by pressing the X button. This can be useful when comparing whether you truly need that specific filter or can get by with using another one that does a similar thing. It's really up to you. I'd say always try out the contrast and exposure filters, since these are key for making a photo stand out, especially if you've done some nighttime photography where it truly adds to the overall mood of a shot. Stickers. While I genuinely don't use stickers myself, I can see people using these in creative ways to add to their photo. How about enlarging certain stickers to block parts of the image? I've used I8 sticker to make certain corners of a photo blacked out, which you can add when combined with a filter or a frame. One neat feature I need to mention is that you can fine-tune the placement of stickers by using the plus and minus buttons. This allows you to move the stickers in a smaller, more precise increments. There's also 10 layers that you can use for the placement of stickers and where they may overlap one another. Emote 16 is also a fun one to try to use to create a more anime-like effect on your photos. Experiment away, I'd say. Frames. At first we thought the frames wouldn't contain much either, but there are a few useful frames here too. Most of them are for decorating purposes though, that add ribbons, colors and a little graphic alongside the border of your shots. A couple of the really good ones are Photo Frame 1 to add a white frame along the photo, Effect 1 to add a pre-positioned lens flare, Effect 2 for a vignette that can subtly guide a viewer's eye towards the center of your shot, and Effect 3 for rain lines. Someone may also be able to create some comic book-esque shots with Comic 1 and Comic 2 frames in combination with some of the filters. Finally, frame Comic 8 I really enjoy. The top and bottom border give your shot a cinematic effect, which works wonders if you want to simulate a wide-angle shot or even focus a confrontation. When applying your filters, stickers and frames, be sure to save and quit to save a separate copy of your photo in the lab. While initially you might be scared that there's only a maximum amount of spaces to save photos, do not worry. Once you've crossed this threshold, the game asks you to allocate more save data, which increases the maximum amount of photos saved to 480. I haven't made enough shots to say for sure, but I think you can save even more photos if you allocate more space after that. Again, to emphasize, a saved photo is still locked to a singular frame or filter, meaning you can only use one filter at a time, even when that photo is already exported or saved as a separate copy. Part 3. Exporting and saving. So, you've edited the perfect photo and now you want to share it with the world. Perhaps you even want to put it on these fancy social media platforms I've heard so much about. There's a couple of ways to go about it. The internal Switch capture system makes it really easy to transfer your photos to any smart device. Go to your album on the Switch software when viewing the photo and press the A button and select the option Send to Smart Device. From there on, the process explains pretty much itself. But why go through all this when new Pokémon Snap offers to directly save the photo to your system? Well, there's a huge catch there. If you go to the lab, MySpace, album, select a photo and save to system, this photo will have an unremovable watermark that says New Pokémon Snap in the ugliest way possible in the bottom right corner. If you select the photo in the menu, enlarge the photo with the plus button, and then take a manual screen capture with the internal Switch capture software, then you can save it as a separate photo. Now this method isn't perfect because the photo will still have a white outline around it and is centered in the middle, but it does remove the watermark. Having downloaded the photos to your Nintendo Switch, you can directly upload the shots to social media, or you can adjust the photos on a computer or mobile device. Now, the Switch's output resolution for these photos is pretty mediocre, so don't expect that applying the filters and settings in other editing programs will increase the quality of your shots. Photos on the Switch itself also cannot be imported or edited in New Pokémon Snap, so the only place where you can share these pictures is on social media. And that's everything about the Resnap and photo modes you might want to know. We can't tell you what the best possible shot is for New Pokémon Snap, but we are able to share some of the ones that we are pretty proud of, from the first island in the game to minimize spoilers of what else you can find on your expeditions. If you have any photo that you're proud of, let us know in the comments or share them with us on Twitter, Instagram or Facebook. Best of luck, photographers!
This video is made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.